What up, man? It's your big brother K-Rino. Hey, check it out, man. I got a question I want to ask y'all. How long should a person be made to pay for a mistake? And I know what y'all thinking. Well, man, it depends on what it was. Depends on the mistake. Let me give a few layouts because I just want opinions because, yeah, you're right. It does depend on what the mistake was, what actually happened. And to be honest with you, I won't even necessarily just relegate it to the word mistake because some things that people do, they intended to do. It wasn't a mistake. They absolutely wanted to do it, but they regretted it later, or they may have done it when they were in a different mindset. They may have done it under the influence of something, and it's like, well, yeah, they tried to do it, but they had a heart, they had some morals about themselves. Picture somebody who's 16 years old, 17 years old, and they commit a murder. Just hypothetical situation. And they're sentenced to life in prison. Tried as an adult, sentenced to life without parole. You never get out. You did this at 16, 17 years old. Now you're 30, 32. You've been in there 15 years. And you've matured as an adult. You're not in that mindset anymore. You just did something real dumb when you were younger. You've had a pretty decent record while you were in prison. No issues. You've literally transformed. In y'all's opinion, should that person still be made to spend the rest of their life in prison? Just the scenario that I mentioned. Or a mistake that was made, might have been a mistake, and that person is made to have to spend the rest of their life in prison. Is that fair? Now, some people may say, well, man, that person, that family, they lost their loved one. Forget that, K, man. That they lost their loved one. Yeah, that person got to pay. And I get that. I totally get that. But I'm of the mindset, and y'all don't have to agree with me, but I'm of the mindset that if I was in that situation, meaning that if it was, God forbid, a family member, a friend of mine that had been victimized like that, and that kind of time had passed, and there was a kid, and, I like to believe that I would be a little more forgiving under those circumstances. Now, there are circumstances where I'm absolutely not going to be forgiving. It's like, no. I hope you rot. Depending on the situation. But that's not what we on right now. That's a different subject for a different time. But what do y'all think? Do y'all think that person should be like, regardless of the immaturity, regardless of just the lack of a developed mind, you just go out and crash out like that? I'm not saying let him go home the same day, but should they spend the rest of their life in prison behind that? And just to take it from a less extreme level, people who have done you wrong in terms of life, like just they may have stole something from you 10 years ago, but they're not that person. They may have whooped you, beat you 20 years ago, but they're not that person. Might have scammed you, but they're not that person. Now, that's the key part. They're not that person anymore, and you've seen that they're not. Because sometimes it's like, well, how you know? How we know they're not that person? Hypothetically, you've seen that they're not. Do you finally say, hey, okay, all right, I'm going to let that go? Or is it for life? Is it for life? Is it forever? Because there are, believe it or not, situations where people do wrong towards another person and they actually feel bad about it. You know, they feel remorseful. And what happens is if you knew somebody 30 years ago and you cut them off based on something that they did, then you see them 30 years later, your mind is going to pick up exactly where it left off at 30 years ago. It's like, oh, that's that fool that blah, 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 blah. You don't know that this person has transformed their whole, they ain't been on that in 25 years, you know. So when does the time come to finally let that go? And I know some of y'all are going to say, y'all might not say it now because I'm saying it, but people normally will say, well, man, you know, man, forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness ain't for the other person. In some cases, I agree with that, but I don't. That's not all the way across the board, because in some cases, I've said this before, I don't give a crap about, I'm not carrying any type of stress or pain or animosity because I'm not forgiving somebody who I don't want to forgive. I could care less. My life goes on just fine. But that only applies to people who may still, you know, love that person or care about that person that they are debating about forgiving, and they want to get a burden off of them. Now, I ain't talking about that. But should people be punished for life behind things that they did? And there are other scenarios that we can go into. You know, you can talk about infidelity in marriages and relationships, and that's when it gets really slippery, because, you know, people's, you know, hearts are involved and their emotions and feelings are involved, and they've invested so much time in the people. Then, but or the forgiveness can be declared, but it's not acted. In other words, yeah, I said I forgive you, but I'm still tripping. I'm still, you know, not trusting. What do y'all think, man? Y'all leave a comment and tell your big brother how you feel about this situation. It's your big brother, K-Rino. Y'all make sure to subscribe to this channel, share these videos, and also subscribe to our podcast channel, the Underground Dialogue Podcast. And I'll catch y'all later on. Peace.